Right.
Well, one of the side effects of the war in Ukraine is, of course, the rising cost of energy, exacerbating the cost of living squeeze here. Well, we can speak now to Jonathan Reynolds. He is the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Very good morning to you. Look, obviously, our attention is very much on what is happening in Ukraine. But, of course, we can't avoid the fact that these sanctions, the impact on the cost of energy will have implications for people who are already struggling here in the UK.
Yes, good morning. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The position for people in the UK was clearly a challenging one, and the truth is you can only acknowledge that the situation will get worse in terms of energy prices and what people are having to pay. Certainly when we look at what might happen around about October for the next time that the energy household price cap will be looked at. There are things that the government can do to make that easier. No one would deny it's an international situation which is driving those prices, but people will need assistance and help to do that. And of course, as well as that, as you've correctly said, all our minds are every morning getting up and seeing the situation in Kiev and the rest of Ukraine. But there are things we can do in this country that will really help. We've seen some of that with the sanctions so far. But there is now this emergency economic crime bill on Monday in Parliament as well. And we think that's the right thing to do. But we do think there are further things that can be done on Monday that would make the situation and the legislation even more effective than it will be otherwise.
Where do we go in the future, Jonathan? Will anything ever change after this war? Energy dependence on Russia. Who the heck ever thought that was a good idea?
Yes, I mean, there is a better future you can see. That is using our renewable capacity in the UK, in particular nuclear alongside that, where, of course, you're not just doing what's required to tackle climate change, but you have an energy security position there, which is better. I think you're right, Eamon, to say that, many decades ago when we discovered North Sea oil and gas, that led to a situation where we use gas in the UK not just for domestic heating, which you'd expect, but also for a significant amount of electricity generation. Now, that means when gas prices are low, that's quite advantageous, but when they're not and the price of gas is set in large commodity markets on a European and global scale, that means you have a problem not just because your energy costs for businesses are very high, the costs for heating your home are high, your electricity costs have gone up at the same time, and that is very, very challenging. So, yes, there is a better future, but right now what the best thing the government could do, I think, is use, for instance, that windfall tax to raise a little bit of revenue to help mitigate the impact on households for the rest of the year. You will have seen, and so will your viewers, that talk of perhaps a £3,000 a year energy bill by the end of the year. We were talking on this programme a few months ago about what £2,000 would mean, and clearly that is significant. So yes, there is a better future ahead of us, but right now this does require some specific action from the government.
I just want to ask you, whilst we've got you, about Abramovich. Of course, he confirmed yesterday that he will be selling Chelsea Football Club. And, of course, Sir Keir Starmer was asking the Prime Minister during Prime Minister's questions yesterday why the UK government hadn't gone after Abramovich. Some of the papers reporting this morning that perhaps he's become something of an unlikely broker of peace due to the trust that Zelensky has in him. He is an Israeli Russian billionaire. He also, of course, shares Judaism with Zelensky and reportedly, according to these reports, flew in his private jet to take part in those peace talks on the Belarusian border. Do you think that should make him immune from sanctions, and do you think that there could be a role for him in that, if this is true?
Look, I can't comment on the validity of that story because I honestly couldn't verify it myself. But what I would say is there's a crucial issue for this country, which is, so the government's key measure on Monday in the economic crime bill is a register of who really owns property in the UK. So Land Registry would tell you if a foreign company owned a building in the UK, but we wouldn't know who really owned that company. Now, that is a huge loophole in which money laundering, assets can be hidden in. And so we were promised change on this in 2016 by David Cameron. It was supposed to begin in 2018, and that didn't happen. Now, the crucial thing that needs to happen on Monday, for not just the oligarchs people are familiar with because they own high-profile assets, but for everyone, the government's proposal is there will be 18 months to register the information that register would provide. So, of course, in that 18 months, you've got the potential to divest of assets, to conceal activity. Our amendment on Monday, which we're asking all MPs to support, would reduce that registration period to 28 days. So the crucial thing for every person who might be covered in the interesting place this has put us, is that you've got to get that information public, but you've got to have a situation where you're not allowing people a period of time. You can't say to people, we're going to come after you, we're going to expose where your assets really are, but you've got 18 months to prepare for that. I think that has to be much quicker. 28 days is a reasonable position. So that's the big change for everyone who's affected by this that I hope to see over there on Monday.